Variable. Variables are any factor, trait, or condition that exist in differing amounts or types. Variables vary, so to speak, and what we're looking at is modifying these, and by modifying these, see changes in what we are studying. We got to deal with some concepts first. Concepts are big overall pictures. When we are dealing with concepts, some of the concepts we talk about are theoretical concepts. These deal with theories. Most of the things that you will be dealing with are not going to be theories, but a theory is like the theory on the expansion of space. And it is a theory because we have information about it. We can study certain things and we can look at certain variables and we come up with something that in the end we would not be able to go out and absolutely prove. We have got empirical studies, and an empirical thing is based on observation and measurement. Most of the studies that we will do are observations and measurements. When we deal with biological studies, it's observation and measurements. When we deal with agricultural studies, it's observation and measurement. We've got nomothetic, and nomothetic studies look at laws or rules that pertain to the general case. If we were looking at philosophy or something along those lines, we might look at a nomothetic sort of thing, where we are looking for a rule that would pertain to something in general. We have probabilistic studies, and here we're looking at probabilities. If you take something like dice and you roll the dice, which way do they come up? There's a probability behind it. If you look at cards, there's a probability behind it. When we do these sorts of studies, we look at probabilities, and these are called probabilistic. We have studies that are causal, or cause and effect. You try and figure out if thing A causes thing B. If you vary A, does that vary B? And these would be a cause and effect sort of study. When we do these studies, we are really looking at variable. We're trying to figure out what can we change that will allow us to study something to be able to give us more insight into what we get out of it. When we deal with variables, we will look at independent variables and dependent variables and controlled variables. Now, the independent variable looks at inputs or causes. These are the things that we change in the beginning because we want to study something, and so we're going to put in and we're going to change our independent variable to see how that affects our dependent variable. Does the amount of calcium in a plant affect its growth? Does the amount of light affect its growth? The independent, we're looking at light. We're trying to see how it affects growth. These are often varied in experiments, and when we vary them, we can then come up with a result from it. We have models, tests, or explain the effects of the independent variables have on the dependent variable. So if we change the amount of light, how does that affect growth? Independent is light, dependent would be growth. And it says here your example is study the level of calcium in the soil on the level of calcium in the plant. We have the dependent variable. The dependent variable is the result or the outputs. So you modify something going in, your dependent variable is the result or the change that you get out of it. Dependent variables are measured. Whenever we do these things, we're looking at it and we're trying to measure the dependent variable so that we can see what sort of result we got out of it so that we can compare the result. This says, example, the level of calcium in the plant based on the level of calcium in the soil. Notice we've turned them around. So the dependent variable is the level of calcium in the plant. The independent variable was the level of calcium in the soil. There are also controlled variables. Now, controlled variables are variables that may be thought to alter dependent or independent variables, but may not actually be the focus of the experiment. For example, we are in Tallahassee. Tallahassee is in the panhandle of Florida. Tallahassee tends to have a very sandy soil. The soil tends to be deep. It tends to have a lack of nutrients to it, or a lack of certain kinds of nutrients. If we go to a place like the Midwest has a totally different type of soil. And when we do this, we could be looking at something within the plant, but our controlled variable would be, with the soil. So when we go out and we analyze this, we have to be able to analyze one and compare it to the other and try and take out the differences in soil focus in a particular experiment. And these are controlled variables. They aren't very well defined sometimes, and therefore we've got to be able to look at what we can deal with them. The climate of North Florida. Climate of North Florida has 4 seasons. We have winter, which starts in early December and goes through about Valentine's Day. We have spring that starts at about Valentine's Day, then goes through about April 15th. We're looking at about 2 months there. Then we have summer, which starts at about April 15th and goes all the way through until about October 15th, or about 6 months of summer. And then we have fall, which starts at about October 15th and goes through middle of December. So 6 months of the year is summer. You go up to a place like Lafayette, Indiana, and you're going to find that summer is actually about 4 months long, tops, and maybe a little less than that. So we get variables, and climate is one of these things that is a controlled variable. We look at it, but we hope that it doesn't affect our experiment. Variety of plant used is also a controlled variable. When we do things, sometimes we use a specific variety, and we need to be specific about what we're doing. So when we're looking at variables, variables become very important. We have to understand what they are, and we have to understand the way experiments are put together in order to be able to have usable results out of these.